What we are about to witness is not merely an event, but an era. It is a decisive chapter in the history of life on Earth, yet it remains largely Meccanu unknown. It was a transformation so profound, so lengthy, that it didn't register as a cataclysm in the way a meteorite strike does, but rather as a slow, implacable metamorphosis. We call it the Carnian Pluvial episode, and its existence proves that the most influential moments in history are often the ones that unfold with glacial slowness. For the creatures living through it, it resembled less a sudden disaster and more a gradual geological shift, a change in the very texture of the atmosphere that altered the dynamics of survival forever. This episode, essential in the construction of the world we now inhabit, remains a footnote in most histories, yet it was the ultimate prerequisite for the rise of the dinosaurian giants. Every profound leap in evolution requires a moment of existential crisis. For the primitive dinosaurs, our Herosaurus from the opening scene, still insignifiants et discrets, insignificant and discreet, this crisis was their opportunity. They were not dominant, nor were they the fastest or the strongest of the Triassic fauna. They were simply survivors, equipped with a few minor anatomical advantages. When the crisis hit, it shattered the existing power structure. It created a temporary, chaotic void, an evolutionary vacuum. In that chaos, the small, agile proto-dinosaurs found the exact conditions they needed. This period didn't just allow them to evolve, it forced the planet to select for their unique traits, ultimately leading them to domination Pangaea, planetary domination, for the next 150 million years. To truly understand this crucible of change, we must anchor ourselves precisely in time. 234 million danes en Ariea, 234 million years ago. We have returned to the Middle-Late Triassic, an era defined by trauma. The stench of the recent past still lingered. Just 20 million years prior, the Permian extinction had wiped out up to 96% of all marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrates. The Earth was rebuilding, but it was a clumsy, unstable, brutal reconstruction. The biodiversity was low, the ecosystems were fragile, and the natural world was prone to extreme swings in temperature and condition. It was a far cry from the lush, balanced, fragmented continents we know today, setting the stage for climatic events of monumental scale. The source of the instability was the land itself. Our world was not a collection of diverse, scattered islands, but a single, immense, colossal landmass, Pangaea. Imagine a single, overwhelming continent stretching from pole to pole, a continuous, crushing slab of rock and soil. This supercontinent was more than just geography, it was a climatic machine. It deformed the atmosphere, twisting the prevailing winds into patterns of extreme intensity. Its sheer scale amplified the climates, creating disequilibrium. Coastal areas might see monsoons, but the vast interior suffered from a profound geological dehydration. The heart of Pangaea was an ecological nightmare, a zone of impossible endurance. À l'intérieur du supercontinent, inside the supercontinent, far removed from the moderating effects of the ocean, stretched immense deserts, some of the most hostile, dry, and unforgiving environments in the terrestrial history of our planet. These were endless, dry expanses, écrasés par la chaleur, crushed by the heat, where water was a myth and the wind carried only sand. There were virtually no trees to break the heat or retain moisture. To survive here required adaptations bordering on the miraculous. It was a landscape of petrified bones and searing dust. where Green Putsaviva almost nothing could survive. Life therefore clustered at the edges. Plus au sud, further south, or along the narrow coastlines, conditions were slightly more varied and tolerable. Occasional, scattered forests managed to survive, nourished by seasonal rains that didn't penetrate far inland. It was in these crucial, marginal environments, where the severity of the desert met the brief relief of the coasts, that the first true dinosaurs were born. They were small, two-legged predators, quick, agile, and opportunistic. They were perfectly adapted to a life of speed and discretion, still a far cry from the majestic, towering giants that would eventually define the Jurassic and Cretaceous. They were the mice waiting for the elephants to falter. For now, the mice remained secondary. The dominant creatures of the Triassic were the established four-legged rulers. The Rorisuchians, those tank-like predators, controlled the top of the food chain. The Rhynchosaurs and Cynodonts, mammal-like reptiles, were the primary herbivores. The early ecosystems remained fragile, haunted by the memory of the Permian extinction. The ruling lineages were perfectly engineered for the dry, sparse world of Pangaea. Their wide stances and heavy bodies were ideal for traversing hard, open ground. The dinosaurs, still few in number, were relegated to the shadows, nibbling on the edges, waiting for their chance, a chance that seemed impossible under the current, established regime. But the established regime was living on borrowed time. The source of the impending upheaval was not a strike from space, but a violent self-inflicted wound by the planet itself. Far beneath the vast, silent ocean of Panthalassa and along the suture lines of the continental crust, a titanic geological fissure opened. This was not a chain of volcanoes in the classic conical sense. This was a large igneous province, a staggering event known as the Rangelia eruptions. Picture gash in the earth hundreds of kilometers long, vomiting forth des flots de lave et des gaz en quantité titanesque, titanic quantities of lava and gases for hundreds of thousands of years. The lava didn't erupt. It flowed in immense, slow-moving sheets across the landscape. The sheer volume of material released dwarfed any volcanic event in human memory. The eruption's true power, however, lay in its gaseous payload. Carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and water vapor were injected into the atmosphere in monumental quantities. The initial effect was rapid global fever. The greenhouse gases caused the world to warm dramatically. This warmth, in turn, accelerated evaporation from the Panthalassa Ocean, saturating the atmosphere with an unprecedented level of humidity. The planet became a gigantic pressure cooker, the air thick, heavy, and hot. The delicate balance that controlled Pangaean weather, the great, dry, high-pressure systems, began to collapse. The monsoons, previously confined and mild, broke free. The humid, supersaturated air condensed, and then the first drop fell. The rains began, not as a storm, but as a systematic, atmospheric release. The rains gagnant en intensité, revenant sans cesse, gained in intensity, returned without ceasing, relentlessly altering the delicate climatic equilibrium of the supercontinent. This was the defining characteristic of the Carnian Pluvial episode, its sheer, grinding duration. It wasn't a week or a month of heavy showers. It was a prolonged period that stretched across nearly 2 millions d'années, 2 million years. Imagine a civilization born, thriving, and dying under a sky that never truly dried out. The sound of falling water became the new soundtrack of the Triassic. This relentless period of precipitation redesigned les paysages, redrew the landscapes. The rock-hard desert floor turned into a vast, sticky mire. Deserts turned into floodplains. Sols détrempés, sodden soils, replaced the arid scrub. New, durable rivers began to carve canyons, and critically, l'expansion des forêts, the expansion of forests, began, pushing deep into the former heartland of the supercontinent. It was a slow, inexorable mutation of Pangaea itself. The consequences were global. The rains didn't just fall, they eroded. For 2 million years, the rains systematically lessivant la Pangaea leached Pangaea, washing untold volumes of sediment, silt, and freshwater into the surrounding Panthalassa Ocean. The colossal influx of freshwater drastically modified la salinité côtière, modified the coastal salinity. The sediment loads choked the shallow waters, literally burying and suffocating the delicate, carbonate-based reef systems that housed marine life. A crisis, quiet but profound, swept through the oceans. Several important groups marines disparurent, marine groups disappeared, victims of an environmental collapse caused by terrestrial erosion. The ocean was suffering from the continent's new humidity. The heartland of Pangaea was unrecognizable. The land that had once been the sanctuary of the great herbivores now turned against them. The herbiers préférés preferred grasslands. Of the mighty rhynchosaurs and decinodonts, plants adapted to dry, tough conditions were being smothered by the rapidly expanding, humidity-loving new flora. The dry, stable plains became choked marécages, et forêts humides, swamps and humid forests. This transformation dealt a catastrophic blow to the old guard. The heavy, four-legged Rorisuchians found their movement hampered, their hunting prowess neutralized by the viscous mud. Their prey, the rhynchosaurs et decinodonts, struggled to find the specific diet they needed, or worse, their massive, sprawling bodies simply became trapped and exhausted in the ever-present mire. The old masters of the dry world, declined rapidly, their dynasty sinking into the mud. The ecological vacuum did not remain empty for long. In this newly formed, wet world, certain lineages began to flourish, exquisitely suited to the swampy conditions. The Aitosaurus blindae, armored etosaurs, reptiles covered in thick protective scutes, grew large, resembling armored pigs, perfectly able to lumber through the dense foliage. The Phytosaurus semi-aquatic phytosaurs, crocodilian lookalikes, dominated the new river systems, snapping up the prey trapped in the permanent floodplains. Even the earliest crocodilomorphs primitives and Triassic tortues found their niche in the new abundance of wetlands. These creatures were the immediate first-generation winners of the Great Rain. But the true inheritors were waiting. As the old dominant lineages struggled and the new aquatic-adapted creatures took hold, the dinosaurs, those small, opportunistic shadows, underwent an explosive, almost instantaneous diversification. Fossils from places like Ischigualasto in Argentina reveal a sudden and dramatic shift. Where once there was only a handful of species, the dinosaurs suddenly became diversifiés et nombreux, diversified and numerous. They rapidly filled the vacated niches of the collapsed herbivores and the struggling predators. They evolved into predatures rapids, fast predators, herbivores primitive herbivores, and sprintures gracile sprinters. The planet was changing its mind, and the dinosaurs, were the selected recipients of its favor. Why them? The answer lay in their feet. The dinosaurs possessed a key anatomical innovation, an increasingly stature dressé, upright stance, and a commitment to bipedal or narrow-track locomotion. While the old rulers had sprawling legs that forced them to belly crawl or lumber close to the ground, the dinosaurs were elevated. This feature proved supremely advantageous in the wet, muddy environment. Their height kept their bodies and lungs out of the mire. Their narrow gait allowed them to move more efficiently through dense, encroaching forest undergrowth, and their agility, made them versatile hunters and foragers in the new, uneven terrain. They were superior in the soil's humids, et les forêts denses, humid soils and dense forests. They didn't just survive where others failed, they thrived, exploiting the climatic chaos, to its fullest extent. The Carnian Pluvial episode had done its job. It selected the superior form of locomotion and metabolism. It weeded out the dry-adapted, sprawling titans. By the end of the Trias, one final, separate crisis, a second mass extinction event at the Triassic-Jurassic boundary, eliminated many of the other emerging winners, like the phytosaurs and etosaurs. But the dinosaurs, already perfected by 2 million years of rain, were prepared. They had secured their diversity, their numbers, and their metabolic edge. When the dust settled, they were the last dominant group standing. The mantle of planetary sovereignty passed to them, marking the beginning of the Mesozoic era, the age of reptiles that would last for more than 150 million demise. Look again at the ancient rain. It was not a localized event, nor was it a simple disaster. This pluvial period, stretched across the canvas of geological time, was the planet's ultimate tool of creation and destruction. It was a rain that effaced desmons, erased worlds, by systematically eliminating the old, dry-adapted order. It created opportunities by forcing the expansion of new, wet-adapted forests. And finally, it ouvre la voie aux géants du Jurassique, opened the path to the giants of the Jurassic. It was a deluge capable of redefining a supercontinent, forging new forests, and most profoundly, shaping the entire future of life on Earth. A 2-million-year reign that crowned a dynasty. And so the tyranny of the sun-baked kings ended, not with a bang, but with the steady, insistent drip, drip, drip of rain. Think about that tiny Herosaurus from the opening scene. Insignificant, a scavenger, hiding from the mighty Rorisuchus. That Rorisuchus was superior in its world, the world of dust and hard ground. But its very perfection became its downfall when the world shifted. It was too rigid, too specialized for the old conditions. Its strength became its fatal flaw in the mud. The dinosaur, however, possessed versatility. Its upright stance was just a minor curiosity in the desert, but in the swamp, it became the key to its survival. It was a pre-adaptation, a latent strength waiting for the right environment. Thank you for joining me on this journey back to the Triassic. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Earth's history, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. It helps us continue to uncover these forgotten chapters of our planet's monumental past.